Welcome to the Explainer. In Santa Clara County, there's a new sales tax on the ballot, Measure A. Today, we're going to break down the arguments that opponents are making against it.
So right off the bat, this is the big question that opponents of Measure A are putting front and center. They really want voters to stop and think, if this passes, where's my money really going to go? Okay, so first things first, what is Measure A? Well, on paper, it's a sales tax hike of about 0.625%. But here's the kicker, and this is really important to the argument against it. All that cash goes straight into the county's general fund. That means it isn't legally tied to any one thing.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to look at what this tax means, where the money might go, whether it's a blank check, what it does to your tax bill, and a hard look at the county's health system. Then we'll wrap it all up.
All right, let's jump into the first part of the case against Measure A. And it all really starts with a basic question. Is this tax fair?
So the core argument here is that sales taxes, by their very nature, are what's called regressive. What does that mean? Well, think about it. Lower income folks spend a much bigger chunk of their paycheck on basic stuff, food, gas, clothes. So a tax on those things hits them way harder proportionally than it does someone with a lot more disposable income.
Okay, now this is where the story gets really interesting. The opponents of this measure pivot. They say, let's not just talk about the tax, let's talk about where the county is already spending its money. And they zoom in on one thing in particular, employee salaries.
Yeah, they don't mince words here. They're basically calling it a reverse Robin Hood situation. The idea they're pushing is that you're taking a little bit from everyone, including the poorest residents, and that money could potentially be used to pay for some of the biggest paychecks in local government.
And they don't just make the claim, they bring the receipts, pointing right to public salary data. For example, in 2023, the total pay and benefits for one county physician came out to, get this, nearly $1.3 million. Another one? Over $1.2 million.
And a third also knocking on the door of $1.2 million. So the point they're making is clear. This isn't just a one-off, it's a pattern.
And when you zoom out, the picture gets even clearer. Looking at the public data, 19 of the top 20 highest paid employees in the whole county are VMC physicians. And as you can see, their compensation packages are regularly crossing that $1 million mark.
So if that's where some of the money is already going, it leads to the next big question from opponents, accountability. If this thing passes, are there any strings attached? And this really gets to the core of what they call the blank check problem.
And remember what we said at the beginning? The money is not legally earmarked for anything specific, like healthcare. It all just flows into the county's general fund. That gives the Board of Supervisors total control over how to spend it. And opponents argue that means there's absolutely no legal guarantee that this new tax money won't just go towards padding those $1 million compensation packages we just looked at.
To back this up, they point to the county's history. They bring up things like no-strings-attached funds that supervisors can use for pet projects, or public money going to big ventures like Levi's Stadium. They use these as examples to say, look, when the money isn't locked down, it can end up in some unexpected places.
All right, next up, let's talk about the big picture. Because the argument here isn't just about this one tax, it's about how it all adds up. Okay, take a look at these numbers. With just Measure A, a city like San Jose hits a 10% sales tax rate. But opponents are looking down the road at another potential tax coming in 2026. If that passes too, you could see places like Campbell hitting an 11% sales tax. Just think about that. That's $11 in tax for every $100 you spend.
So, the last major piece of the case against Measure A has to do with the biggest ticket item in the county's budget, the public health system. And the question they're asking is pretty blunt. Is this system just too big and inefficient? Now, this is a pretty stunning chart. Look at this. Per person, Santa Clara County has more than 4 times the number of public hospital beds as Los Angeles County. When opponents see a gap that big, they immediately start asking questions about efficiency.
And this is the linchpin of their argument. They say the county's problem isn't that it doesn't have enough money coming in. The problem, they claim, is the sheer cost of running this health system, which eats up more than half of the whole county budget. 52 to 54% to be exact.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. What's the final argument that opponents are presenting to voters?
So the narrative against Measure A goes like this. It's a regressive tax that hits the poor the hardest. That money isn't guaranteed to go to services. Instead, it could just fuel $1 million pay packages. On top of that, it's pushing already high sales taxes even higher. And maybe, just maybe, the real problem is an inefficient health system that needs to be reformed, not just handed more cash.
And so, in the end, the case against Measure A boils down to this one final question for you, the voter. Is the answer to the county's problems simply more money from a tax hike, or is it time to demand a fundamental change in how that money is being spent right now? It frames the choice as one between more revenue or more reform.